Please join me in welcoming a very old friend, State Councilor, the Honorable Jiechi, to this podium.
Thank you, Ambassador Collar-Hughes, for your very warm remarks of introduction. Well, to come to the Washington, D.C., the best reward for me is to attend tonight's dinner and to see so many old friends and new friends. And it gives me a great pleasure. Secretary Pritzker, Secretary Vilsack, my dear colleague, Vice Premier Wang Yang, Chair Alan Coleman, Chair Collar-Hughes, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. The fifth round of the China-US Strategic and Economic Dialogues, as Vice Premier Wang mentioned, has achieved good results, and it has completed the mission entrusted by our two presidents, which is an important mission. And we have taken a solid step toward the goal of creating a new model of major country relationship. Over a month ago, our two presidents held a no-tie meeting at Annenberg Estate, Sunnylands, California. They reached important agreement on creating a new model of major country relationship based on mutual respect and win-win cooperation. This meeting has charted the strategic course and drawn up the blueprint for growing China-US relations and opened a new chapter in Trans-Pacific cooperation. That was a strategic, constructive, and historic meeting. As you know, in December 1978, the Communist Party of China decided to launch a reform and opening up program at the third plenary session of its 11th Central Committee, which represented an opportunity to boost the growth of China-US relations. China's decision of reform and opening up and establishment of diplomatic ties between China and the United States have become two major global events since the 1970s. In the 3 decades and more since then, both China's reform and opening up endeavor and China-US relations have come a long way. The first decade of China-US relations saw China open itself to the world and to the United States. Since then, China has been developing rapidly its relations with the rest of the world, and China-US cooperation also began to get off ground in many areas and has been growing from strength to strength. We have been cooperating in the field of trade, businesses, as well as cultural programs. This has become a torrent that has bound our two great nations closely together. In the second decade of China-US relations, inspired by Mr. Deng Xiaoping's remarks during his tour of southern China in 1992, China went further on the path of reform and opening up. China-US trade and people-to-people exchanges both grew rapidly. Despite some twists and turns, China-US relations moved forward, becoming an irreversible trend of the times. With the advent of the 21st century, China-US relations entered its third decade of strong growth. China's accession to the WTO in 2001 marked its full integration in the global economy. China-US cooperation expanded, and the interests of the two countries became more closely intertwined. China-US relations went well beyond the bilateral context and increasingly acquired global and strategic importance. Indeed, they have become one of the most important bilateral ties in today's world. Today, China-US relations have entered its fourth decade of mature growth. Our two countries, the world's two largest economies, have formed a community of inseparable shared interests, from promoting economic and social development at home to promoting global economic recovery, from resolving international and regional hotspot issues to tackling global challenges. China and the United States enjoy broad common interests and have huge space of cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the current international and regional situation are undergoing profound and complex changes. Globalization and IT application have accelerated. The mankind is facing both unprecedented opportunities and numerous challenges, which call for joint response by all countries. With China being the largest developing country and the United States being the largest developed country, we must and we should abandon the outdated zero-sum game mentality and create a new model of win-win cooperation between major countries. The new model of major country relations envisioned by our presidents at Annenberg Estate is the only right choice for China and the United States. It is not only in the interest of our two countries and peoples, but also conducive to peace, stability, and prosperity of the world. To build such relations is a great cause, unknown in history, a cause that will inspire the future generations. It requires wisdom, vision, and actions, and more importantly, political resolve on both sides. First, we should view each other's development with an open mind and in an inclusive and positive light. We should embrace dialogue, cooperation, and partnership, and post-confrontation conflict and rivalry. We need to increase high-level exchanges of visits, enhance mutual understanding and trust through face-to-face contact between the leaders of our two countries. We should make full use of the over 90 bilateral governmental dialogue and consultation mechanisms such as the S&ED, maintain close consultation and coordination, and bring our bilateral relations to a new and higher level. Second, we should seize new opportunities presented by each other's development and strive to make new progress in cooperation. The Chinese people are now working to realize the Chinese dream, which is a great renewal of the Chinese nation, and the two centenary goals. The Chinese government is ensuring steady growth, adjusting economic structure, and improving people's well-being. This will offer more opportunities for China-US cooperation. We should fully leverage each other's strength, enhance pragmatic cooperation in two-way investment, energy, environmental protection, infrastructure, urbanization, and other fields, and at subnational level, and nurture new growth areas and deepen our shared interests. We should boost cultural and people-to-people exchanges. The two sides are working on a China Garden project in Washington, D.C., which will be another symbol of China-US friendship in the new era. Vice Premier Wang Yang and I are both glad to know that there are both secretaries attending tonight's dinner mentioned that they will give full support to the development of the China Garden. And tonight, the Vice Chairperson of the Committee of Population, Resources and Environment of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference and the Executive Director of the Chinese side for the China Garden, Madam Zhang Zehui, is here. Let me acknowledge her as she has made important contribution to this project. We should also deepen coordination and collaboration on global issues such as climate change, cyber, food and energy security, and regional hotspot issues such as the Korean nuclear issue, the Iranian nuclear issue, and Syria, and keep expanding the foundation of our shared interests. Third, we should view differences between our two countries in proper perspective and tackle disagreement in an appropriate manner. Given differences in history, culture, value, and the social system, it is natural that our two countries have differences on some issues. Vice Premier Wang Yang already mentioned that the world that we live today is a splendid and colorful one. Therefore, we should act in the spirit of seeking common ground while shelving differences. Respect the right of the two peoples to independently choose social system and development path, fully accommodate each other's core interests and major concerns, explore new and constructive ways of managing differences, and endeavor to turn difficulties and hot issues into areas of cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, as a Chinese saying goes, a single thread does not make a cord, nor a single tree makes a forest. To create a new model of major country relationship between China and the United States calls for joint efforts and a broad support from all sectors of the two countries. The ping-pong diplomacy 42 years ago enabled a tiny ball to move the globe. Today, friendly exchanges among various social sectors between our two countries are flourishing. I hope and I believe that the people of all sectors from both sides will work together to sustain the positive momentum of China-US friendship and carry it forward. And we should get more people involved in creating a new model of major country relationship and make them benefit from this endeavor, and thus provide an inexhaustible source of power driving the growth of China-US relations. Ambassador Carla Hales just now mentioned my first trip to the United States. At that time, I was 27 years old. I can remember my age very clearly because I was born in the year 1950 and I came to the United States first in 1977. I think I have always enjoyed a good and close relationship with the U.S.-China Business Council and National Committee on U.S.-China Relations. Indeed, it is fair to say that the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations was the teacher which gave me the first inspiration and led me to understanding the United States, because that time I was only a very young interpreter, and my visit to 30 cities of 10 U.S. states gave me an opportunity to contact the senior U.S. officials as well as leading business figures as a very junior interpreter. And I was also glad that the two places I visited in 1977, the Iowa and the city of Chicago, are the exact origin of the two secretaries seated tonight. I was deeply and pleasantly impressed by my visit to Iowa. We visited the John Deere factory, and we saw its tractors. And that time I thought that if China also had such machineries to help us to harvest, that would be very good. And now we are glad to see that trade between China and the United States has been growing, and we thank Secretary Vilsack for his contribution to the relationship between his state and China, as well as the cooperation in the agriculture sector between his state and China, and between the U.S. and China as a whole. I also visited the Great Lake, the Lake of Chicago, and at the time I thought I was standing along the sea and the ocean, and I was also impressed deeply by the buildings of Chicago. And later on, I know that in front of the New Yorkers, we should not talk about the buildings of Chicago. I'm glad to see Secretary Pritzker today, and I'm confident that she will make important contribution to the growth of China-U.S. relations. U.S.-China Business Council, I remember that once in the Mayflower Hotel, it held a reception, hosted the former President Nixon, who was the pioneer for China-U.S. relations. And I was deeply impressed by his speech back then. I was also impressed enormously by the enormous contribution made by U.S.-China Business Council for the growth of China-U.S. relations. Although I have made many visits to Washington, D.C., every time I felt they were pleasant trips because I have many beautiful memories here and good friends here. And when I went to White House with Vice Premier Wang Yang this afternoon, I passed across the Mayflower Hotel and I gazed at it because the China Liaison Office in the United States, before it had its permanent place, was headquartered in the Mayflower Hotel. And I met many of my American friends there at the hotel, and they have offered me a lot of assistance. Whether I was a second secretary or a minister in the embassy or an ambassador in the embassies, therefore, I would like to acknowledge and express my tribute to General Scowcroft, who was also one of the pioneers for the China-U.S. relations. At the same time, the general has also taught me a lot. And probably he can still do more push-ups than I can do now. I also met with former Secretary of Defense Cohen. I've also been to the balcony of the 8th floor of the State Department. I was there in the past, and this time, although Secretary Kerry came here to co-chair this dialogue, despite the fact that his wife was not in good health, and the first thing that he did was to lead me to the 8th floor balcony, and which reminded me of the beautiful memories as well as my exchanges with my American friends. So I definitely need to mention former Secretary of State Colin Powell, because when he was served as the Secretary of State, I had the most opportunities of going to the 8th floor balcony because he always hosted the ambassadors and the wives of ambassadors of other countries in the United States to attend all kinds of receptions and the dinners held in the State Department. He himself also contributed greatly to China-U.S. relations. As the Vice Premier mentioned, it is not possible to list all the names of all my friends here, but still, I want to say here that thanks to the leadership of the Vice Premier, our team and the U.S. team has had very close cooperation and collaboration. This strategic and economic dialogues have helped to boost the relationship between two countries and have made good progress. Well, sorry for taking so much time, which has exceeded the arrangements of the host, and I would like to say sorry. And in particular, I would like to say thanks to James Barris. I also wish to say thanks to Mr. John Frisbee and Mr. Stephen Orlins. Thank you all. Thank you.